Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the dimly lit corridors of the local playhouse, where budding artists tread their first steps, Brooks Marshall's gaze fell upon a crumpled yet intriguing poster. The humidity, ever present, had already left its mark on the paper, but the words, boldly printed, remained untouched by the moisture. Romeo and Juliet, a revolution unchained by gender. A unique interpretation, no doubt. As he scanned the details, Brooks felt his pulse race. For years, he had been a shadow in this world, taking classes and accepting only the most obscure roles, hiding in the backdrop. His mentor, the insightful Vanessa, had persistently urged him to embrace the spotlight, but doubt had always held him back. "Consider giving this a shot?" A familiar voice broke his concentration. Startled, Brooks turned to see Vanessa, coffee in hand, her eyes seeming to bore into his very spirit. She knew him better than he knew himself, and he found himself stammering. Maybe for one of the background characters." Vanessa sighed, leaning against the wall. "You know, Brooks, you've got more talent than half the people who strut in here thinking they're the next big thing. But you hide it under a bushel of self-doubt." "I'm just shy," he mumbled, running a hand through his short-cropped blonde hair. "This production might be perfect for you. Director wants to challenge conventional casting. Shake things up." She tapped the notice. "Auditions are tomorrow. I expect to see you there." Before he could formulate a response, she walked away, leaving him staring at the paper, a strange flutter of anticipation in his chest. That evening in his modest apartment, Brooks paced back and forth, the worn script in his hands. He'd performed scenes from Shakespeare in class before, but never auditioned for a full production. His reflection in the mirror showed a tall, lean man with hesitant blue eyes, dressed in unremarkable jeans and a navy button-down shirt. Nothing about him suggested a performer. Nothing suggested he belonged on a stage.
"To be or not to be,"
he whispered to his reflection, then laughed nervously at his own cliché. It wasn't Hamlet he was auditioning for, after all. The next day, dressed in the same navy shirt, but with khaki pants this time, Brooks sat in the auditorium, watching others perform. When his name was called, he walked to the stage on legs that felt disconnected from his body. The director, Marion Conrad, a woman with steel-gray hair and piercing eyes, looked up from her notes. "Brooks Marshall, what will you be reading for us today?"
"Romeo,"
he said, his voice barely audible. Someone in the back row called for him to speak up. "Romeo," he repeated, louder this time. "Scene 5, the first meeting with Juliet." Marion nodded, and Brooks began. As he spoke the familiar words, something shifted. The auditorium faded away. For those brief moments, he wasn't shy Brooks Marshall anymore. He was someone else entirely. When he finished, there was silence, then a soft murmur from the small audience. "Thank you, Brooks," Marion said, making a note. "Actually, could you read something else for me? Juliet's monologue from Act 2, Scene 2? Brooks froze.
"Juliet's lines?"
"Yes. This is a gender-blind casting, after all." Hesitantly, he accepted the script she held out. Taking a deep breath, he began to read Juliet's words, feeling strange at first, but then something clicked. The vulnerability, the passion, the depth of emotion. It flowed through him in a way Romeo's lines hadn't. When he finished, Marion was smiling. 3 days later, the cast list went up. Brooks stood in the hallway, a knot of anxiety in his stomach as others pushed past him to check the board. "Congratulations, Juliet," Vanessa whispered, appearing next to him with a wide smile. Brooks blinked, certain he'd misheard. "What?" "You got Juliet. Marion was blown away by your reading." His heart pounded as he shouldered his way to the front of the crowd. There it was, in black and white. Brooks Marshall, Juliet. The first week of rehearsals was awkward. The actor playing Romeo, a confident woman named Harper with short auburn hair, seemed completely at ease with the gender swap. Brooks, however, stumbled through his lines, hyper-aware of every raised eyebrow and whispered comment. "You need to embrace it," Marion told him after a particularly difficult rehearsal. "Right now, you're playing at being Juliet. I cast you because I saw her in you. Let her out." That night, Brooks couldn't sleep. Marion's words echoed in his mind. Let her out, as if there was some hidden part of himself waiting to emerge. 2 weeks in, Marion brought in the costume designer, Eleanor, a petite woman with brilliant green eyes and hands that never seemed to stop moving. "For this production, we're keeping the period elements but with modern twists," she explained, measuring each cast member in turn. When she came to Brooks, she circled him thoughtfully. "You have good shoulders, narrow waist." Her measuring tape fluttered around him like a butterfly. "We'll need to emphasize your waistline. For the balcony scene, I'm thinking a yellow sundress with a white cardigan, innocent but not childish. For the wedding, something more formal but still youthful." Brooks nodded, his mouth dry. Until that moment, the reality of appearing on stage in women's clothing hadn't fully registered. The first dress fitting came a week later. In Eleanor's workspace, a converted garage filled with racks of clothing, mannequins, and the constant hum of a sewing machine, Brooks stood awkwardly as she handed him a garment bag. "Try this on," she said, pointing to a small changing area sectioned off by a curtain. Inside, the bag was the yellow sundress she'd mentioned, along with the white cardigan. The fabric was light, almost weightless in his hands. With fumbling fingers, he changed out of his green t-shirt and jeans and slipped the dress over his head. The sensation was unexpected. The material flowed around him, settling against his skin with a gentle caress, unlike anything he'd experienced before. He put on the cardigan and, after a moment's hesitation, turned to look in the mirror. The person staring back at him wasn't Brooks Marshall, the shy, acting student who blended into the background. This person stood taller, seemed more present somehow. The dress's sunny hue brightened his complexion, making his blue eyes more vivid, and the cut emphasized a waistline he'd never paid much attention to before. "Let me see," Eleanor called. Taking a deep breath, Brooks pushed aside the curtain and stepped out. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly, then she smiled. "Perfect. We'll need to take it in a bit at the waist, but the color is exactly right. How does it feel?" "It feels..." Brooks searched for words that wouldn't sound strange. "Different, but not uncomfortable." "Different is good in theater," Eleanor said, kneeling to pin the hem. "Different makes people pay attention." By the 4th week of rehearsals, Brooks was wearing the costumes regularly, becoming accustomed to the feel of dresses, the way they moved as he moved. Eleanor had created 5 different outfits for Juliet, each one making Brooks feel increasingly comfortable in this new skin. His favorite was the emerald green evening gown for the Capulet Ball, where Romeo and Juliet first meet. The fabric shimmered under the stage lights, and the structured bodice gave him an elegance he'd never associated with himself. "You're becoming her," Harper commented during a break. When we started, I could see you thinking about every move, every line. Now it's flowing naturally." Brooks smiled, smoothing the green fabric over his knees. "It's strange. When I'm dressed like this, speaking her words, I don't feel shy anymore. It's like being given permission to be someone else allows me to be more myself." Harper nodded thoughtfully. "That's the paradox of acting, isn't it? We put on masks to reveal truths." As opening night approached, Brooks spent more time at the theater than at home. His small apartment began to feel like a way station, somewhere he slept and showered before returning to the place where he felt increasingly alive. The night before the final dress rehearsal, Marion kept the cast late, working through problem transitions. It was nearly midnight when they finished, and Brooks was still in his yellow sundress from the balcony scene when he went to the dressing room to change. Alone in the quiet theater, he took longer than necessary, reluctant to remove the costume. When he finally did, putting on his ordinary gray t-shirt and jeans, something felt wrong. The clothes that had been his daily uniform for years now felt constricting, alien. He stared at his reflection, seeing the dress-shaped tan lines on his shoulders from rehearsing outdoors. For a wild moment, he considered putting the sundress back on, walking out into the night as Juliet rather than Brooks. Opening night arrived with the usual chaos of last-minute adjustments and frayed nerves. The small theater was packed. Friends, family, local arts supporters, even a reviewer from the regional paper. Standing backstage in the emerald ball gown, Brooks felt a tremor of panic. "Breathe," Vanessa said, appearing beside him. She'd been at every rehearsal, offering support and advice. "You've got this." "What if they laugh?" Brooks whispered. "What if they don't see Juliet? Just a man in a dress?" Vanessa squeezed his shoulder. "Anyone who can't see the beauty and truth in your performance doesn't deserve to watch it. Besides," she added with a wink, "you look stunning in that gown." The house lights dimmed, and the show began. The first time Brooks stepped onto the stage, there was a momentary hush from the audience. Then the miracle of theater took over. The story carried them away, and soon they weren't seeing a man or a woman. They were seeing Juliet, passionate and doomed. By the final bow, the audience was on their feet. Brooks stood center stage, the emerald gown glittering under the lights, tears streaming down his face. In that moment, surrounded by applause, he felt truly seen for the first time in his life. The show ran for 3 weekends, earning rave reviews. A reimagining that reveals new facets of Shakespeare's most famous love story, wrote the regional critic. Brooks Marshall's Juliet is a revelation, vulnerable yet strong, innocent yet knowing. On closing night, the cast gathered for their traditional after-show celebration. Brooks wore the yellow sundress and white cardigan from the balcony scene, his favorite costume, and the one Eleanor had said he could keep as a memento. "To new beginnings," Harper toasted, raising her glass. New beginnings. The words echoed in Brooks's mind as the party continued around him. Tomorrow, there would be no more performances, no more transformation into Juliet. The thought filled him with a hollowness he couldn't articulate. Later that night, after saying goodbye to the cast and crew, Brooks stood in his apartment, the yellow sundress still on, unwilling to change. On an impulse, he opened his laptop and began searching online shopping sites. 2 days later, packages began arriving. Dresses in various styles and colors, blouses, skirts, even a pair of low heels. Brooks tried each item on, studying himself in the mirror, the flutter in his chest growing stronger with each new outfit. He found himself drawn to colors and styles similar to Juliet's costumes, the yellow sundress, of course, but also flowing skirts in soft fabrics, feminine blouses with delicate details, and one splurge, an emerald evening gown that reminded him of the Capulet ball, though this one was modern, with a simpler cut. For a week, Brooks lived two lives. Outside his apartment, he was still Brooks Marshall in his usual t-shirts and jeans. Inside, he was someone else, someone who felt right in flowing fabrics and colors that brightened his complexion. Then came the invitation to the drama department's graduation celebration. Brooks had completed his 3-year certificate program, along with several others from the cast. The event would be formal, held at an upscale restaurant downtown. Standing in front of his closet, Brooks stared at his options. On one side hung his old life, the navy button-down, the unremarkable slacks. On the other, the new clothes, including the emerald gown. His phone chimed with a text from Vanessa. "Looking forward to seeing you tonight. You were the star of the year." The star. Not the shy background player anymore. The thought crystallized something that had been forming since that first dress fitting with Eleanor. 2 hours later, Brooks stood outside the restaurant, heart hammering in his chest. The emerald gown fit perfectly, complemented by subtle makeup he'd practiced applying over the past week. His blonde hair, though still short, had been styled to look softer, more feminine. Taking a deep breath, he walked inside. The hostess smiled warmly. "Welcome, ma'am. Are you at the drama department party?" "Ma'am." The word sent a thrill through him. "Yes," he said softly, then cleared his throat and tried again with more confidence. "Yes, I am." The private dining room was already half full when he entered. Conversations paused briefly as heads turned toward the door. Brooks saw confusion in some faces, recognition dawning in others. Vanessa was the first to approach, her smile wide and genuine. "You look beautiful," she said, embracing him. "Truly yourself." "I feel like it," Brooks replied, the tension in his shoulders easing at her acceptance. Harper was next, raising her glass in appreciation. "The emerald is definitely your color." Gradually, the initial shock faded as classmates came to greet him. Some seemed uncertain how to react, but most followed Vanessa's lead, treating the change as natural, even expected. During a lull in the conversation, Eleanor appeared at his side. "I knew that dress would be perfect on you the moment I designed it," she said. "Have you chosen a name?" The question caught Brooks off guard. A name? He hadn't thought that far ahead. But standing there, in the emerald gown, surrounded by people who were seeing him, truly seeing him, for the first time, he realized he couldn't go back to being Brooks. Not completely. "Melody," he said, the name rising from somewhere deep inside. "I think I'm Melody." Eleanor smiled. "It suits you. Musical, flowing, like the way you move in that dress." As the evening progressed, Melody found herself the center of attention, not because of the clothes she wore, but because of the confidence she now radiated. When Marion Conrad arrived, the director took one look at her and nodded in satisfaction. "I knew there was something special about you from that first audition," she said. "Some people take a lifetime to find their authentic selves. You found yours on my stage." "Thank you for casting me," Melody said. "It changed everything." "No, dear. I just opened a door. You were brave enough to walk through it." Later, as glasses were raised in a toast to the graduating class, Marion called for attention. "Before we end the evening, I have an announcement. My next production will be The Glass Menagerie. Auditions begin in 2 weeks." Her gaze found Melody across the room. "I hope to see many of you there." The possibility of another role, another opportunity to be on stage as her true self, sent a rush of excitement through Melody. This time, there would be no need to transition from Brooks to someone else. She could arrive as herself from the beginning. As the celebration wound down, Harper approached with a proposal. "A group of us are planning to rent a house together, sort of an artist's commune while we try to break into the professional scene. We have room for one more." "You want me to join?" Melody asked, surprised. "Of course. Your Juliet was the talk of the town. Besides," Harper added with a grin, "I've got a feeling Melody is going to take the theater world by storm." Walking home that night, the emerald gown shimmering under the streetlights, Melody felt a sense of peace she'd never experienced as Brooks. The shy man who'd stood before that audition notice months ago seemed like a character she'd once played. Familiar, but distant. The next morning, Melody woke early, filled with purpose. Her phone showed several messages from classmates, all addressing her by her new name. Acceptance had come more easily than she had dared to hope. She dressed in a simple blue skirt and white blouse, taking time with her makeup and hair. Her short blonde locks were growing out. Another deliberate choice she'd made weeks ago. Soon they would be long enough for a more feminine style. Her first stop was the theater, where cleanup from the production was still underway. Eleanor was there, sorting through costumes. "I wanted to thank you," Melody said. "Not just for the costumes, but for helping me see myself differently." Eleanor looked up from her work and smiled. "The clothes don't make the woman, Melody. They just help her recognize herself." Together they went through Juliet's wardrobe, with Eleanor offering advice on building a personal collection that would suit Melody's new life. "Start with versatile pieces," she suggested. "Things you can mix and match. And always, always have one spectacular dress that makes you feel invincible." "Like the emerald gown," Melody said. "Exactly! Every woman needs armor for the battles ahead, even if that armor happens to be made of sequins and silk." The battles came sooner than expected. That afternoon, Melody visited her parents' home, heart in her throat. They'd seen the play, had praised her performance, but this was different. This wasn't a character she was portraying for a limited run. Her mother opened the door, freezing momentarily at the sight of her in the blue skirt and white blouse. "Brooks?" "It's Melody now, Mom." The words came out steadier than she felt. "Can I come in? I'd like to talk to you and Dad." The conversation that followed was difficult, filled with confusion, questions, and tears. Her father sat in stunned silence for most of it, while her mother cycled through disbelief, concern, and, finally, a tentative attempt at understanding. "Are you sure this isn't just the role affecting you?" her mother asked. "You've always been so immersed in your parts." "The role didn't change me," Melody explained gently. "It allowed me to recognize what I've always felt, but never had the words or courage to express." She smoothed her skirt over her knees, a gesture reminiscent of those rehearsal days with Harper. "I've never felt right as Brooks, never comfortable in my own skin. As Melody, I finally do." By the time she left, no grand resolution had been reached, but a door had been left open. Her mother hugged her at the doorway, whispering, "Give us time. This is unexpected. I know, Melody replied. It was for me too, at first. The weeks that followed brought a series of adjustments, both practical and emotional. Melody moved into the house with Harper and 3 other actors from their program. Having supportive roommates made the transition easier, providing a safe space to explore her identity. Harper, in particular, became an invaluable ally, accompanying Melody to shop for new clothes, helping her practice different makeup techniques, even standing beside her during awkward encounters with people from her past. Think of it as method acting. Harper suggested one evening as they prepared for auditions for The Glass Menagerie. Except the character is the authentic you, and the run is indefinite. The auditions went well. Marion cast Melody as Laura Wingfield, the fragile daughter with the collection of glass animals. The role was smaller than Juliet, but no less challenging, requiring a vulnerability that Melody found increasingly accessible as she embraced her true self. On opening night, 6 months after her debut as Juliet, Melody stood backstage in a vintage 1930s dress, her blonde hair now long enough to be styled in soft waves around her face. This time, there was no fear of the audience's reaction, no worry they would see Brooks instead of the character. Her parents sat in the 3rd row, their presence both a comfort and a source of anxiety. They were trying, her mother more actively than her father, to understand and accept her transition. Their presence tonight felt like a significant step forward. After the performance, as Melody accepted congratulations in the lobby, still wearing the vintage dress from the final scene, a distinguished-looking man in a charcoal suit approached.
Ms. Marshall, David Harrington, West Side Theater Company.
He handed her a business card.
Your performance was remarkable. We're casting for our next season and would love to have you audition.
West Side was a professional company 2 cities over, small by national standards but respected in regional theater circles. An audition there could be the first step toward a genuine career. Thank you, Melody said, accepting the card. I'd be honored. Later that night, as the cast celebrated at a local bar, Melody found herself seated next to Vanessa, the instructor who'd first pushed her to audition for Juliet. Did you know? Melody asked. When you insisted I try out for the play, did you somehow know what would happen? Vanessa swirled her wine thoughtfully. I knew you had depths you weren't allowing yourself to explore. The rest... She gestured to Melody's dress, her confident posture, the easy smile that had replaced Brooke's nervous fidgeting. That was all you. Discovering your own truth. I'm auditioning for West Side next week, Melody told her. They saw the show tonight. They'd be fools not to cast you, Vanessa said with certainty. But whatever happens there, remember this. You've already succeeded in the most important performance of your life. Playing Juliet? No. Vanessa touched her glass to Melody's in a small toast. Becoming Melody. The West Side audition led to a supporting role in their summer production, a modern drama about family secrets. Melody gave notice at her day job and moved to the new city, finding a small apartment within walking distance of the theater. On her dresser sat a framed photo from Romeo and Juliet. Melody, in the emerald gown, center stage in the balcony scene, her face illuminated by stage lights. Beside it was a note from Eleanor. For Melody, who found her true reflection in the spotlight. Some mornings, looking at that photo, Melody could barely recognize the person she'd been before, the shy man with the short blonde hair and hesitant eyes, hiding in plain sight. Brooks Marshall had existed on the periphery of his own life, watching others live while he merely survived. Melody lived firmly at the center of hers, each day bringing new discoveries, new challenges, new joys. The yellow sundress and white cardigan hung in her closet alongside a growing collection of clothes that expressed different facets of her personality, each one more authentic than anything Brooks had ever worn. 1 year to the day after closing night of Romeo and Juliet, Melody received a text from Marion. "Anniversary dinner tonight. The old cast is gathering. Please say you'll come." The restaurant was the same one where she'd first introduced herself as Melody to her classmates. This time, she arrived in a royal blue cocktail dress, her blonde hair now falling past her shoulders in loose waves. No one did a double take. No one showed surprise. She was simply Melody, arriving to meet old friends. Harper was there with her new girlfriend, a dancer from the West Side Company. Eleanor had brought sketches of costumes for Marion's upcoming production of A Streetcar Named Desire. Vanessa regaled the table with stories of her newest batch of acting students. "None as surprising as you," she told Melody with a warm smile. As glasses were raised in a toast to the production that had brought them together, Melody felt a profound sense of gratitude. The yellow sundress and white cardigan had been more than just a costume. They'd been the key to a door she hadn't known existed. "To finding ourselves in unexpected places," Marion toasted, raising her glass higher. "To the roles that change us," Harper added. "To Melody," Vanessa said, her eyes bright with pride, who had the courage to become her own masterpiece. Later, as the evening wound down, Melody stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The night air was cool against her skin, the stars bright above the city. A year ago, she'd stood in this same spot, terrified of walking through those doors as her true self. Now, she couldn't imagine living any other way. The emerald gown from that night hung in her closet still, a reminder of the moment everything changed. But it was the yellow sundress, the first feminine garment she'd ever worn, that held the most special place in her heart. Simple, bright, life-changing in its ordinariness. From inside came the sound of laughter, her friends calling her name, her real name. Melody smiled and turned back toward the light, toward the life that had been waiting for her all along. No longer playing a part, no longer hiding in the wings. Melody had finally taken center stage in her own story, and the performance would continue, authentic and true, for all the acts to come. Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!